So Josh, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, Zach, could you go ahead and start your screen share?
Okay.
Hi guys.
Hello, everyone. All right, it is 5:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So today will be lesson 7 of programming with Java, or lessons, and today you're going to be learning about data structures, such as arrays and lists. And we'll also be covering enums along the way. Okay, so as you can see, this is our schedule as of now. This is our week of August 4th. So today we're covering the data structures, but on Thursday we have planned to have our first lesson on threads, and then we'll have threads, the second part of it, sort of next Tuesday. Notice that a lot of this part of the schedule might be volatile because we might want to have like the competition segments earlier. So make sure to watch your emails or honestly, not even your emails, but like just know that there could be changes in the road ahead to our schedule, or not the timing, but mainly the topics that we're covering in the sessions. But yes, the same timing we're following for every week is Tuesdays and Thursdays from 5:30 to 6:30. All right, so here's what's on the agenda today. We'll give you guys the solution to the quadratic function calculator. So you should have been able to implement all your object-oriented practices in that, and we're looking forward to have some like nice solutions. Just
You are here.
just make sure you guys are on mute if you're not talking. So just one thing to note about like when we're going over solutions, we're also going to open up the floor for volunteers who want to show their code first, so that like we can, kind of gauge your participation, see if you're following along, and if you need any help in any areas. So please step up to those sort of things so that, you get the interactive learning experience. Once we've gone over that, we'll move on to our first data structure, arrays. So these are just simple arrays and, with square brackets. Then we'll move on to lists, which are actually a Java object util. So that's like a different, more intuitive use of an array. And we'll actually use lists more often than not, more often than arrays in robot programming. In fact, I personally prefer them, but they all have their own applications. And then, like I said before, we'll give you an intro to enums or enumerators, which, yeah, we'll get into that later, so you'll understand what those are, even though it's quite a weird word. And then we'll assign another project at the end. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to them, and they'll go over the quadratic function class.
So last week you guys were assigned a challenge to make a class that represents a quadratic function. So we're going to go over that code. So if I can just share my screen. Just the desktop. Where is Repel? Here. Okay, so you guys see my Repel? I should probably go to quadratic function. Yeah. So you guys see the Repel?
Yes?
So what we're going to do is we're going to add a file, and we're going to call this quadratic function.java. And once Repel creates the file, which could take a minute, that's weird. So it's quadratic function.java. Okay, so now we're going to do public class main, or sorry, public class quadratic function. And then we're going to set up our properties, which in this case, we're going to have private ints because we have to follow encapsulation. So private int a, private int b, and private int c. So again, the quadratic function is ax squared plus bx plus c. So now we're going to create our constructor. So public quadratic function is going to be int a value, int b value, and int c value. And all we're going to do is we're just going to assign the parameters. So a is equal to a value, b is equal to b value, and semicolon, and c is equal to c value. So this is just our constructor and our variables. Now we're going to go on to our methods. So our methods are going to be telling us what to do with our quadratic function. So if I go back to the presentation, we need to create a method that gives us the x value of the vertex. So public int x value vertex. And then I believe the function for the x value at vertex is 2b by a. Is that correct? Wait.
I think it's x equals minus b plus or minus
No, like for the x value of the vertex.
x value of the vertex.
Oh, that's negative b over 2a.
Yeah, negative
Okay,
b.
negative b over 2a. So int vertex is equal to negative b divided by
2a.
2 times a. And so it's not going to be negative b. We have to do times negative 1 in order to get the actual negative b, because you can't just put a minus. So negative b over 2a is going to be the value of our vertex, and we're just going to return vertex. And so now to get the y value of the vertex, we can actually, well, okay, before that, we should create a function that's called get value, get y value. And we're just going to pass in our int x value. And then here, we're just going to use this, the a, b, and c, to calculate our x value, our value of the quadratic function. So we're going to say int y is going to be a times ax squared, so that's x value times x value, plus b times x value plus c. And we know this is going to work because of order of operations. So it's going to do multiplications before the additions, and then we're just going to return y. So now that we have these two, we can get the y value of the vertex. So public int get y value vertex. And we can actually call these two methods from inside this method. So we're going to say return the get y value of x value vertex. And that's going to give us the y value of the vertex. And then now all that's left to do is calculate the first and second zeros. So this is where our quadratic function comes in. So public int 0, 1 I'm just going to call it 0, 1. And over here, we're going to do public int 0, 2. So these two methods are actually going to be pretty similar. So we're going to say -b. So we're going to do our numerator. Int numerator is going to be -b, so that's -1 times b. And then since we have 2 zeros, I'm just going to pick 1, so I'm just going to do plus here. Plus, and then here, it was the hint we gave you is math.square root. Okay, so -b plus or minus root 4 times a times c, and then the denominator, and we're actually going to put these as doubles, so we get a more accurate value, is 2a. And then we're going to return a double, return numerator divided by denominator. And I hope I spelled those right. And now all we're going to do is we're just going to copy this. And then here I'm just going to change the plus to a minus. And so that's your quadratic function class. So now all I need to do is quadratic function 1 is equal to new quadratic function, and my a value is going to be 5, my b value is going to be -3, and my c value is going to be -1. Just pick any random numbers. Now I can print out, so system out.println, and we're going to do function 1 dot, and let's say we want the first 0, and this should be a double here. And now if we run it, we should get, oh, and b has to be uppercase. So again, this is another reminder that spelling matters in Java. B. That's a problem. Okay, wait, math.square root. Okay, so that implies that this is, okay, we're just going to do something simple. We're just going to do 1 and 0 and 0, and we should get 0 for that. Yeah, so okay, so I probably put in a quadratic number, that quadratic function that didn't have a 0 or something, but here we have just a simple x squared, and that gets a 0. So any questions on how that works? Are there any questions?
Is that the same
one's raising
answer
their
everybody else got?
Does anyone, would
Yeah,
anyone
I think
like to,
everyone's sleeping.
does anyone have any questions on that? Did anyone have any trouble?
Does it make sense to everyone?
I don't think anyone wants to talk right now.
It's crickets. We only have crickets.
Yeah, it's crickets.
Okay, so if no one wants to share, then I guess I'll turn it over to Vasu to talk about arrays.
Okay. It says I'm an attendee for some reason.
It says you're an attendee. Okay, let's Vasu. Make a presenter. Okay. Change.
All right. Thank
Right.
you. And then here, actually, can you share the presentation again?
Sure, presentation.
And
Sure.
says I'm an attendee again.
Really.
Yeah.
Make a presenter. Change.
Okay.
Make a presenter. Change. Okay. So try again.
Here. Let's just go over to this. Can you guys see?
It's loading and yep, we can see it.
Okay. So now we're going to be going into arrays. So if I can actually get there. Yeah. Okay, so you guys should have learned this before in math class, but what an array is, it can hold like multiple things into one area and hold like multiple pieces. Like for example, in math, it can hold multiple numbers into one small compact space. Same way in here, you can hold multiple pieces of data into one small compact space. And yeah, it can hold any type of number. It can hold numbers, it can hold strings, it can hold doubles, and it can also hold other arrays. But every single data type must be the same. Along with those being the same, it also has a fixed length, meaning that you can't go over however many numbers you decide to go for. And so like if you look over here, if you look at data type, variable name equals new data type length, that length decides exactly how many pieces of data you're actually going to store inside that array. And yeah, basically there's an example of it. We're going to get more into that in just a little bit. And yeah, and values in the array are another important thing to remember about arrays is that it always starts out 0. So the first number will always be called by 0, and we'll actually get to see more of that in just a second. And we'll see more about the array methods and properties in just a second.
Yeah. So just the thing about nomenclature, when you're referring to a piece of data in an array, you don't say what we say the array name, sub, and the index. So if I want the second element, I'd say my array sub 1.
And we'll be able to see that in just a second when we actually initialize our first arrays. So if everyone can go to their REPL and just go along with what we're doing. So let's initialize our first array. We can initialize it using 2 ways. We can initialize one. So let's make one where we take let's say you go to a store and you get multiple pieces of items, and what you do with those items is you actually have to put that into a sales tax, and then you have to get back your items and your total, how much the actual cost will be. And we can do that here. So let's initialize our first array. We're going to put in double, and then we put in these square brackets. And that basically signifies to the computer that, hey, this is an array. Then if I can click, then what we're going to do is we can just name it whatever we like. I'm going to name it before prices. Make sure that you're still following camel case, because that's very important. I'm going to name it before prices because like that's before the sales tax and all. And then if you want to actually initialize what the values of that array is going to be, right when you actually, if you want to write down what the values are going to be right when you actually initialize your array, you can just put in these curly brackets, put a semicolon at the end, and then write down your values. So let's say I buy something for $5, then put in a comma, and then we can get like $7, something for $15, something for $3, stuff like that. Then what we can do is we can actually get our second array, and we can call this after prices, because we actually need to run our calculations on these ones. After prices. What we can do is, because we know that there are already 4 things in here, we can actually define the oh sorry, those are supposed to be, that's supposed to be different. So instead of, since we already know that there are going to be 4 things in the before prices, there are going to be 4 things in the after prices. So we can actually do new, and then we could just do double, and then we put in our array thing again, put in our semicolon, and here is where we actually put in how much how many values are going to be inside the array. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We can just put in 4 there. And so far, this array has all of its pieces of data already initialized. This one is yet to know what its data is, but knows exactly how many slots it should actually open. And yeah, now we can get more into our calculations.
Yeah. So one thing to note is that when you create an array of integers or doubles, and you just specify a length, so like the line 9, the default values are all going to be zeros.
Yeah. So what we can do now is we can actually what we need to do now is we actually need to figure out exactly what these values are. We need to actually get these values, and then we need to multiply it by 1.06, which will actually put in the sales tax. So we can do that by using a for loop. And so what we can do is we can just set up for loop int I. Well, actually, we're going to be setting up, well, you know what, never mind. Let's do int I, and then we're going to set that to 0. We can do I is less than, and then since we know that they're going to be, it's going to run 4 times, we can just set up 4 here. And then we can also, and then we can just put in our I++ here. And yeah. Now what we're going to do is we're actually going to put in our, now we're actually going to run our calculations. But first things first, how do we actually get to know what our values here are? What we can do is we can actually get our, that's some feedback. Okay, thank you. So, what we can do is we can actually display it. So we can do system.out.println, and that's going to display it. And how do we actually call a certain piece of data? Well, we actually write in our before prices, or whatever our name of our array is. So after we actually do our calculations, it's set to after prices. We can actually call stuff from after prices. And then here, what we can do is we can actually put in those brackets, and whatever we put inside these brackets, it's going to allow us to actually see what's in here. So let's say we want to know what the price of the first object we get is. If we go back to our slides, we said over here that it starts out at 0. The numbers always start out at 0. So Java does this weird thing where the first number will be 0, second number will be 1, third number will be 2, so on and so forth. And so that's basically what we're going to do here. So if we get before prices 0, that should get us the first number. And so if we actually run this, I spelled
Got a
that wrong.
picture print line. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
And I
guys
should probably comment this out just in case. And you can see that it shows 5. We can change this to whatever we like. So if we want to know what the third one is, 3 minus 1 is 2. We can set up 2 here. because 0, 1, 2, and we got 15. And so it can go on like that. Another really handy array method to know about is the actual length one, which can tell you exactly how many pieces of data you have inside of there. So we can do before prices dot, then all we just do is we type in length. And what this will do is this will tell the computer, hey, check out this array and then see how many things are inside of it. It sees 1, 2, 3, 4, and they'll display 4 over here. So, yeah. And then if we add more onto there, it'll adjust accordingly. And then we can actually use that to our advantage later on. So now we know that if we use 0, we'll actually get the first one. 1 will get us 2. 1 will get us the second one. 2 will get us the third one, and 3 will get us the fourth one. We can actually use our for loop here. Since it's starting out at 0, we'll be able to get our first one. So we can do double, and then we can create a new variable. We can just call this multiplier is equal to, and then what we're going to do is we're going to call before prices, and then we can call, if you guys just remember back to when we were talking about our for loops and stuff, we can actually see what our variable is within the loop. We can see exactly what I is within the loop. So we can do before prices, and then we can get the I value. And so what this is going to start out with is it's going to start out with 0, and it'll get you your first number. And then when it goes on to 1, it'll get you your second number, so on and so forth. Now all that's left is to multiply it by 1.06. Once that's multiplied, all we need to do is we just need to set after prices to the corresponding thing. So we can do after prices, and then we can just do I, and then is equal to, and this is how we actually set the value, if we want to change the value of a certain area inside of the array. So after prices I is equal to, and then we could set this to multiplier. This is going to do is it's just going to take each value, multiply by 1.06, and then set it to after prices. And then we can actually display system.out.println after prices, and then we can actually get the I value there, and that way you'll be able to see exactly what's in the after prices. So we have 5, 7.
Again.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
On line 13, fix your print line. It's spelled wrong again.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm typing too fast, I guess.
There you go.
And so if we run this, it'll take these before prices, multiply by 1.06, and then put them over here. And yeah, that works, I think. Most of them work. So yeah. Yeah, this one's supposed to be 30, but it extended a bit far. And so, yeah, are there any questions?
So everyone understands how to initialize an array and how to use an initializer list, by which sets the values beforehand and
Okay,
how to access the length.
Can we go back and go over a few things?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is very good for teaching students, and you did a very good job, but we would never want to hard code the number of elements in the array in line 10. Okay,
Right.
You never want to hard code the number of elements.
Yeah, that's
all right. So what you should have is before prices.length.
Yeah.
So
And then, as I said a bit ago, that'll get the length of how many things.
Exactly. And then change line 10. Okay. Does everybody know why we would do it this way? Okay, the reason is that if you add more numbers to line 8, you don't have to change anything else in the code. It will go ahead and work. If you go ahead and add numbers to line 8 and you left the code the old way, then you would have to go in and modify line 9 and line 10. Otherwise, your program would append or at least not give you the right answer. Okay, so it is always better. The preferred programming practice would be for you to put in the length of the array, all right, when you're iterating through elements in the array. So whatever the length of the array is, this code will now work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, second thing, you really don't, in line 11, you don't have to define multiplier, right? You could just go ahead and say you could just say after prices, sub I equals before prices times 1.06. Just line 11.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just like that. Okay, and that way you do it in one instruction instead of 2. Okay, makes your program run faster because you're doing it in one step instead of multiple steps. It is not wrong to put it in an intermediate variable. You can certainly do that. It's just more efficient to do it in one variable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Does everybody understand that? Are you good with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. You did a very good job.
Thank
Okay,
you.
please continue.
Okay, so now let's get back to our presentation. So we talked about arrays, but the really one key fact about arrays is that they have a fixed length. And so that makes sense in some ways because then the computer knows exactly how much memory the array is going to take. But other times it's going to be really annoying. What if you don't know how much data you're going to get? What if you need to keep creating new arrays in order to get longer and longer lengths? Well, the solution to that is to use an array list. So the array list is another type of object that holds a collection of variables, just like an array. But unlike arrays, and this is the key difference, is that array lists have a variable length. So you can add or remove or change any object you want. You can have 0 objects, you can have 5 objects, you can have 100 objects, you can have 1,000 objects, and you can change that while you're running code. So you don't have to pre-decide how big you want your list to be. So one notable caveat to this, like an asterisk, is that array lists can only actually hold other objects. So if you want an array list to hold an int, it can't. So it can only hold other objects like strings and any objects that you create. But the workaround to this is that we have what's called wrapper objects. So wrapper objects act like integers and doubles, but they're actually objects instead of primitives. So int, you use integer. Double, you'd use double. This d should be lowercase, and then Boolean would be Boolean, and so on. So it's basically the name of the primitive, and then in uppercase would be the wrapper object for that primitive. So when you're creating an array list, when you specify the data type, what you do is you won't say int, you'd say integer, variable name, and then new array list. And so even though you're using a wrapper object, you don't have to actually worry about using the wrapper object because Java actually automatically converts between the wrapper and the primitive. So I don't have to create a new integer object. I can just add an int directly, and then it automatically converts it to an integer. So another difference with array lists is that array lists rely on methods. You don't just access it directly. You have to use methods to access everything. So instead of length, you use dot size to get the size, to add an object, you have to do the dot add method. If you want to get an object, you have to use dot get. If you want to set an object, you have to set the object at an index, and then remove, you have to use the remove method. So everything you do with an array list is done through a method. So now let's switch over to Repel and we can talk over array lists. So I'm going to share my screen. So this is our Repel. And what I'm going to do is let's come up with a new situation. So situation is, let's talk about celebrities. Right. So I just want to make a list of my favorite celebrities. So let's say we want an array list. So what we want to do is we want to be able to make a list of all of our favorite celebrities. So celebrities in this scenario are going to be as a string. So just like here, we can add and remove. So what we're going to do is we're going to say array list, or AY, array list, and we're going to do string is equal to new array list. And that should be our list. Oh, and we have to specify a name. So this is going to be my favorite celebrities. Right, so now let's come up with a list of celebrities. So we can say my favorite celebrities dot add, and we can just keep adding strings now. So let's say I like Oprah. And then let's say my favorite celebrities dot add, and let's say we like Grant Imahara. I think that's how you spell it. But oh no, Grant Imahara passed away. So I have to remove him from my list. My favorite celebrities dot remove. And then here, he's our second item in our list. So we're going to put 1 as our index. So again, just like arrays, array lists start at 0. So Oprah is at index 0. Grant Imahara is at index 1. So we're going to remove him, and then instead we're going to say my favorite celebrities dot add, and let's pick Tori Blakey, another Mythbuster. And so we can make our list as long as we want. Let's say my favorite celebrities dot add Bill Gates, and we can come up with whoever we want. And so now we can print out my list of celebrities. So system.out.println my favorite celebrities, CEOEBRITIES, are inside here. So now we can loop through it just like we loop through our array. So we create a for loop. So for int I equals 0. Int, so then I is less than my favorite celebrities. And this time we'll say dot size, right? So instead of length, arrays have length, array lists have size, and then I plus plus. So here I can use system.out.println, and what we're going to do is we are going to println, and we're going to say my favorite celebrities dot get I. So this basically everything an array list can do is the same thing an array can do, except that it's a variable length. So we have add to add, we have remove to remove, and then dot length becomes dot size, and then to get a property, get an item, you don't put the brackets, you put dot get and the item. And now we can run this, and we get our list of celebrities. So now let's
Cy, that's a really important point, is the difference between an array, up at the top, is you have to allocate the number of elements. So you need to know what that is, beforehand. So before prices.
So you see how
4 or 5 slots, right?
Yeah. So here for this array, we have to specify the length we want. And right, in this case, the length we want for after prices is how many ever elements there are in before prices. But here, I never specified how big I want my array list. I can add as many celebrities as I want. So I can do my favorite celebrities dot add Donald Trump. We can add my favorite celebrities dot add Joe Biden. We can add whoever we want. We can keep adding to our list. We can make this 1,000 names long, 1,000,000 names long.
Very good.
So now the key thing to note is that array lists can't use integers. Can't just use an int because they're primitives. Array lists only store objects. That's weird. Okay, let's try refreshing the page. And let's give Repel a minute to think. So that's interesting.
Well, that's depressing.
Yep. Okay, now it's ready. So a key thing to note is that array lists can't hold primitives. So let's go back to our same application with the sales tax calculator. So what we're going to do is instead of saying int, we're going to do array list. And then here, instead of int, we're going to type integer with a capital I. And then we're going to type my receipt is going to be a new array list, integer, and then parentheses. Is it INTE or INTI? Believe that is that correct spelling? So we're
Yep, that's right.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we're gonna do is now instead of saying int, we gave an integer. But what Java does that's really neat is it automatically converts between the primitive and its wrapper object. So I can say int item one price is equal to 5.03. And so now I can just add that directly to my array list. So my receipt dot add, and we're going to do item one price. So if I run this, it's going to run without any errors. Oh, and this should be a double. And that double. So let's change this to an array list of doubles. So again, this is just an integer. We have to expand to int. We have to expand to integer, but everything else, all you do is you convert. You take the name of the primitive, and then you put a capital letter. Right. So this entire list runs without any issues. However, if I try and put double with the lowercase d, all right away you can see it's giving you an error. And that's because you can't put a primitive in an array list, unexpected type, and the issue is that it's a primitive and not an object. So I can keep this going, and I can say double. Okay, sorry. My receipt dot add, and let's say next one is going to be $50.3. And let's say my receipt dot add is going to be $503. So now that we've added all these items, we can go through and do the same thing as we did up here and calculate our sales tax. So I'm just going to copy this, put it down here, and then remember the change between an array and an array list is that length becomes size. And this should be my receipt. And then here I can do my receipt dot get I. And what I'm going to do, instead of creating another array list, I'm just going to create a total price. Double total cost is equal to 0. And remember, it's going to convert the int to a double automatically. And so I'm just going to say total cost plus equals that. And then at the end, we're going to just print out system.out.println. And all we're going to say is total cost. We're just going to print out our total cost. And if I run this, and that needs to be
0.
Yeah, 503.0 there. And it's $591.82, 83 cents. So that's how you can use a primitive with an array list. Any questions on that?
Hey, Sai, show them on line 53 how to put out the literal total cost equals and then what the total cost is so that they understand how to do that.
So the total cost is equals, and so we have a string, and then all we're going to do is we're just going to concatenate the value of the variable. So total cost. Yep, so this is something we've been doing since like a couple lessons ago. And when used with a string, the addition operator becomes concatenation, and it just adds whatever you have right onto the end of the string.
Right.
So any questions on what an array list does and why it's different from an array?
Crickets.
So if there's no questions, I'm going to turn it over to Animesh to talk about enums. Animesh, you can take over.
Can you change the slide to the
Okay. So array list methods. Who took control? Okay, take control. Okay. So someone took, okay, here you go. Enums.
Okay, so enums, once you look at it, once I show you the code, is actually pretty simple. Enums can be used to assign constants to a variable, and you use it when you have values that you know will never change, and you can use it in things like switch statements to like for different outcomes in switch statements. So I'll just show you some code.
Are you able to share?
Okay, the reason you would use an enum is that you could go ahead and put a number in a program, but those get called magic numbers, where you don't understand, when you're reading the code, you don't understand that takeoff is a 1 and flight is a 2 and landing is a 3. So the reason to use an enum is to make your code more readable for the programmers that are going to read it that come after you. Okay, it just makes the program easier to understand. All right, please continue.
So I'll share my screen. Are you able to see it?
Yep, we can see it.
Alright, so I'll just say enums. So as you saw on the PowerPoint, one of the first things we declared was enum, and then inside of it were different constants. So we can't do that inside of main. We have to actually do it outside of main, but inside of class. So we type lowercase enum, and then we name it something. So in this case, I'll call it plain. Brackets, and then here, separated by commas, we list the different constants. So I'll put takeoff, flight, and landing. And we don't need a comma for the last one since it's the last one in the list. So now we'll go down here and we'll make a variable that we can assign the constants to. So the name of this variable is the same name we put up here, plain. So we'll put plain, then the name of the variable, which will be plain state, and then we'll set that to plain, then dot, and then here you see we have the three constants. We have flight, landing, and takeoff. So I'll set it to flight for now, and then put a semicolon. Now, as we learned in one of the previous sessions, we can use a switch statement, for example. So we put switch, then in the parentheses, the variable, so plain state. And now we can put our cases. So I'll just quickly write a case for flight, and this is exactly how the value we're looking for is exactly how we wrote it here and above. So case flight, you can say system.out.println you can take off your, and put that, and then our break, then case takeoff system.out.print and then we'll put case landing put your tray up. And that's our last one. And so because we're using a enum and it can only be any of these three values that we're looking for, we don't have to make a default because the default should never run since it can only be of the three values we put. So here, in order to change the state, we just change this from like flight to takeoff, and then we can run it. it says fasten your seatbelts. So this way you can easily change the state or the constant and therefore change the outcome of a switch statement, in this statement, whatever. So here I only put system.out.println commands, but you can put whatever you want up until the break. So yeah. Any questions?
One thing I feel that should be added about enums is that if you guys remember from FTC or if you guys are in FTC, there's this thing called Vuforia, and Vuforia actually uses enums in order to actually figure out exactly what the value is. So I think that might be a bit helpful in case anyone who actually has done FTC might remember that.
Yeah, so the entire point of an enum is to have an easy human readable way to compare states. So we could use a number, but that's really hard to read. We could use a string, but that takes up a lot of memory. So that's why we use an enum. So no more questions? So if that's the case, I'm going to give you guys your challenge for this week. So stop. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, slides. And it should open up the slides. And I just want to jump to the end. So your challenge is going to be to create a program to sort numbers. So what you're going to do is you're going to get an array with numbers, and the array can have any length. So it can have 2 numbers, it can have 10 numbers, it can have 100 numbers, and the numbers can be any value. But what you need to do is you need to put them in increasing order and then print out the final array. So this may be a bit more challenging than some of our normal challenges, but we'd like you guys to give it a try. And just as a hint, you're probably gonna end up using some nested for loops. So we just want to see how far you guys get with it, and then if you don't understand it, that's okay. We'll explain how it works. But we'd like you guys to try and figure this out for yourself. And so I'm just going to say this now. You know how to do this with everything that we've taught you. Everything you need to know is already there. So this is more of trying to figure out the logic behind it. So don't think you have to get it right and you have to like Google up the solution. You don't. We just want you to try your best, and we can see how you guys do with it. So are there any questions on what we want you to do?
Another thing that I just want to say about these challenges is please actually do them, and if you guys do them, well, you guys should be doing them, but please volunteer to share them, because if you're able to share them and you get it right, or then other people, if they see your code and they see that you can do it, they can actually feel that they can do it too. Then same way, if you don't get it right, at least you know where you got wrong, and that way we can actually help you. And so please just volunteer to share your code and actually do the code.
Yep. So are there any questions on what we're looking for you guys to do, or anything about what we covered today? Because arrays and array lists are really important, and you're gonna use them a lot on the robot. So we'd like you guys to do it, to understand it. And if you can figure this out, then that means you have a really good understanding of how to use arrays and array lists. So if there's no questions, then we are done for today. Thank you guys for coming.
Crickets. Thanks, everybody.
All right, so thank you guys, and we'll see you on Thursday.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
bye.
you. Bye.